To order tonight for our Executive Council meeting, January 25th, 2024. We have regrets from Councillor Donaldson so far. Next on the agenda is, of course, our invitation to stand and move. If anybody feels the need to get up and move, that's a continuous item on our agenda. Number 3, the approval of the agenda or conflict of interest declaration. I'm sure you've all had a chance to look at the agenda. Is there anybody who has anything to add? It's a long agenda.
Sorry. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes.
I just, on 7.B, not that I think it's a conflict of interest, but I think it might be better that I'm outside the room for that discussion.
Okay. Sounds good. Is there anybody who has anything to add? Okay, seeing none, we have a conflict of interest declared by our Deputy CAO. Otherwise, we are going to approve the agenda as presented. Did you have something to add, Councillor Surratt?
Yes, I have a
Okay.
conflict of interest
Sorry?
on that list that I see on I should have looked at it first. It's on the rentals.
Rentals. I wondered if
Yes,
you
and
were-
I do have a rental, so I'll excuse myself from that.
Okay, I thought of that actually when I looked over
You know
the
what, at
agenda.
the other meeting when I spoke, I only realized after that I was involved, I shouldn't have said anything.
Okay,
Yeah, thank you.
so we've had 2 conflicts of interest declared. Thank you. Next, we have a presentation from our Western Wren. There is an attachment as well, so come on up. You have to speak in the mic. Yep, just press.
Buddy. Most of you know me. I'll introduce myself again, and I do have a different role at the Western Wren. So my name is Brenda Lagrandeur. I have been with the Wren unbelievably almost 7 years now, and in May I took on a new role as a project coordinator with them. It sort of is portions of the role that Evan Nemeth did. So many of you would have had Evan in front of you for quite a few years, and one of the projects that I took over from him was what we call our energy project. So in 2019, we had a feasibility study done of the region, which resulted in a baseline of the energy consumption and energy transmission lines that we have for power throughout our region. What that showed us in 2019 was that we had some of the smallest in transmission capacity and oldest lines in the province. So we knew that that was potentially an issue. Of course, the Western Wren is interested in the growth of the business community in the region, and that potentially was a measure that could maybe limit some investment in our area. So we went on and did 2 more studies to see what could be done. I guess it's, if you need more money, there's 2 ways to it. You could work harder, or you could spend less of what you have. So because we didn't think that there was going to be an investment in the infrastructure, in the power grid, we decided that we had to look at ways that we could work to reduce some of the draw that was on the grid now. So the last study that we had done was released literally, I think, a couple of months before I got started. So when I started digging into that, it had recommendations in there that had us look at some of the not largest individually, but the draw off of our electrical grid, the majority comes from individual households when you put them all together. So we don't usually work in the household residential sector, but this was one of the recommendations that if we could figure out or work on a project that would support homeowners to reduce their energy consumption, that would then free up some capacity on the grid for potentially more commercial investment. So the report had several recommendations, but two of them that we decided to tackle first were what they called an energy concierge position. So this was basically a person hired that would help a homeowner navigate all of the programs that are existing right now. So if anybody has thought about getting a heat pump or solar panels or anything, there are rebates, there are programs, there are provincial, there are federal, there are so many out there. They're really confusing. So what was proposed was somebody that would be trained to help people navigate programs that were already out there, already in place. The other was to establish a regional PACE program. So a PACE program, and Julian's going to get into that a whole lot more, is a way for a homeowner to finance those investments in their homes. So when I went to Mr. Google and started looking up energy concierge, I was looking to see a job description, to be perfectly honest, to see what that would look like and what skill set that person would need. I came across a company here in Nova Scotia who had a slew of actually named energy concierges. So when I found that, I thought, well, there are already people in the province doing that work. What does that look like? Which is when I reached out to Julian to find out exactly. And to be honest, we were still looking at whether that would be somebody that we would hire specifically. We found out really, really quickly by talking to several other municipalities, including Bridgewater, that's done extensive work in the energy sector, that they felt and had dismissed the possibility of hiring that one person to do that. It would be, number one, a burnout position because we are a large region and there are so many, and even the capability to track all of that, to be able to, your mother and your taunt and, who did what and what program and when's the rebate coming and that sort of thing. So that combined with the fact that Switch Pace was an organization that already did that in the municipal realm, worked with municipalities across Nova Scotia, across Canada really, doing exactly what we were hoping to establish. We started down the path of talking about a partnership. Well, while we were doing this talking, what always happens in municipal world, a funding application became available. So the Sustainable Communities Challenge opened, and we started talking about formalizing a partnership between some of our municipal units to apply for that fund. So we did, which is why we're here today, because you are one of those possible partners in that program. So the town of Digby, Municipality of Yarmouth, Municipality of Argyle, Municipality of Clare are the 4 municipal units. The Municipality of Barrington and the Municipality of Digby already deliver a PACE program. They have for several years now, at a maybe smaller scale than what we're hoping to do. So that's why the REN is involved. That's how we got to collaborate with Julian, and that's why you at this point are partners in this potential. Hopefully we'll find out the results of our funding application in the month of February or March. And once that gets moving, Julian is going to go into what that looks like, what that program looks like. So I'm going to switch it over and let Julian take over.
Thank you, Brenda. I'm Julian Boyle. I'm the president of Switch Pace based in Halifax. Really great to be here tonight. Thank you. I hope to be back frequently in the summer and spring. I guess tonight is really just a bit of an ice-breaking thing. We've been working for a couple of months on developing this regional program. And this is really kind of just some orientation for you, and really, it's all about you. So ask any questions, stop me at any time. I have about a 15-minute presentation here, just to kind of give you some flavor of what to expect and sort of what are some of the nuts and bolts of a program. But this is a kind of thing that takes a little while to unpack, and so I think I'm just going to keep at the high level today, but certainly if there's anything that's burning, we're here to help and answer your questions. Maybe next slide. So I think I'll just start with just the introductions. Next slide. Just a little bit, but before that is like, why would a municipality be interested in this type of programming? There's certainly lots of other communities that we work with in Nova Scotia and PEI. But I kind of, it's the classic question of the why. Brenda's touched on a little bit of it about the opportunity really to help residents save money. And that's really a big driver in the programming. People have a lot of opportunity to reduce their energy costs, but it's hard and complex. And so we really have to kind of support that and make that easy for homeowners. So that's kind of the underlying kind of the driver on that. There are some other motivations, really interesting things from a municipal perspective. Certainly the REN recognizes some of the economic opportunities really from a local economic development perspective. Energy efficiency is one of those resources that you can't buy from Halifax or Toronto. It has to be purchased locally. And so we really work to build capacity with local contractors and create opportunities for businesses here locally. I'll use the Charlottetown program as an example. When we started that programming about 2.5 years ago, I remember we had 3 or 4 contractors come out to the first industry session. Well, here 2.5 years later, we have 80 contractors that we've supported projects in. And some of these are small doors and windows contractors. Some of these are large solar contractors, a whole variety of scale of contractors and types of work that they do. So it really does drive a lot of economic activity, not just to say put money back into homeowners' hands, but really back into the community. Some other interesting things, I would say, from a programming perspective and a community perspective, we really see this really touches homeowners and communities and the ability to engage residents, particularly around climate change and action around climate change and really empowering them. It's a really fun part of what we do. Everybody recognizes climate change as an issue. I mean, I got the first look at the fire here from last year driving down today. But this is an existential issue really for all of us, and to really put the tools into homeowners' hands, it really does help empower them, and it's a really great thing from a community perspective when we can actually have concrete action that, it's not going to be solved here in Argyle, the global climate challenge, but we all need to contribute and do our part, and residents really, they like that. There's going to be other things in the programming too that really support communities that typically can't access efficiency programming. These projects can be costly, complicated. There's lots of barriers why homeowners can't participate. In this part of the province, part of the research and the development of the programming, there's very high rates of energy poverty. And energy poverty is defined as when you're spending more than 6% of your income on energy. And so there's rates here of about 50% of the population is either experiencing high rates of energy poverty or extreme rates of energy poverty, where they're spending up to 15 to 20% of their income on energy. So the program supports through the Community Challenge Fund, if we're successful. We'll apply some of those grants to help low-income homeowners, but also address some other barriers, and particularly around the Acadian community here too. And so we're going to have special kind of marketing and outreach really engaged with the community here to really make programs accessible and easy to use. So that's kind of a very broad strokes of the why. And maybe next slide. Brenda's kind of touched on a little bit about who we are. I hopefully still act and think like a municipal person. I've spent about 15 years working in the city of Halifax, where we developed the first PACE program in Canada. I founded this company 4 or 5 years ago to really help support smaller communities that don't have the capacity to start these programs. These programs are complex both technically, financially, some marketing, IT, all kinds of things that intertwine within the successful programming. We're, I guess, immodest to say we believe we're the leaders of PACE programming in Canada. In the last year and a half, we've deployed about $20 million of programming activity in communities large and small. We've been nationally recognized by FCM. We won the 2022 Sustainability Communities Award with our municipal partners. And this is all we do. We don't do bike lanes, EV charging networks, all kinds of things in the sustainability equation. We do energy efficiency programming and financing to really help support homeowners and communities. So that's kind of just a general snapshot of who we are. Maybe next slide. This is some of the communities that we're working with. We've just recently launched programming in West Hants and Pictou, the county. We have active programming really all through the Maritimes and lots of interest from other communities outside of Nova Scotia and PEI that we're also helping support. So it's exciting times for us. It's never easy, though, to get these programs off the ground, and to really work with our local partners is really important. Like, these programs do not succeed with just us coming in and doing something. We really have to work closely with the municipalities, with organizations in the local context to really make these programs successful. Next slide. So kind of, why we think we're kind of a little bit different. I think we've designed kind of a turnkey approach to supporting municipalities. So we do a lot of things that other program delivery agents might do bits and pieces of the kind of PACE programming equation. We kind of do it from an end-to-end perspective. And so certainly one of the big things is providing capital, but also helping manage that. So we have a very strong back office finance department where we do monthly billing and collection directly with homeowners. So we can basically support municipalities that might not have some of the infrastructure that would be in the back end, needed in the back end of these programs as well. I think as a private enterprise, we have kind of the speed of deployment and really can help seize opportunities. We see the space of programming activity in energy efficiency and climate change. It's becoming ever and ever more complicated, but with ever and ever more opportunities for communities. And that's kind of really our focus, is to kind of help design programs that really maximize the benefits to communities. Maybe next slide. So kind of what to expect. I think I've got two slides here that kind of show like a typical homeowner project. So like kind of go back to the real stuff, like what does a project look like for a homeowner, and kind of what does it cost, what's it gonna save them. So next slide. The first one here is kind of these are taken from our homeowner slide decks. We usually do like quite a bit of education and engagement directly in communities with homeowners. And this kind of paints the picture of a solar project in Nova Scotia. A typical project, about $26,000. We charge a one-time administration fee that's how we recover our costs and operate. And so the homeowner would, in essence, finance about $27,000. As of today, there's about a $5,000 rebate available to homeowners, which we help make sure that they take the correct steps to reduce their costs. I think this reflects the Nova Scotia Power rate increase of a couple of weeks ago, but we typically see for a system like this, some homeowner would be saving about $180 a month, and after 10 years, they've paid the system off. So the other thing I point out here, and this has maybe gone a little stale now in the last probably 6 to 8 weeks, But there's opportunities to help owners access lower cost financing too. So like the federal government has a 0% loan program. One of the problems with that program though is homeowners have to come up with the upfront money. And so we are working in other communities where the local financing program is acting as bridging to sort of port that, and it takes about a year to navigate a homeowner through that federal program. It's complicated, and it's an ever-changing kind of landscape. In fact, we're anticipating that program might be over by April or May, so it might not even be an option for homeowners come the springtime here. But this project, over this, system over its lifetime saves a lot of money, more than the $27,000 investment. And so I haven't seen your solar panels here, but you're going to be reaping the rewards of that for decades to come and keeping your operating costs low. Maybe next one. This is a lot more common type of project. This is usually about 40 or 50% of the projects that we finance in the programming is heat pumps. Everybody is raving about heat pumps these days. There is all kinds of money being thrown at homeowners to help them adopt heat pumps. In the last 6 to 8 weeks, an additional top up for people who are on oil. If anybody, is anybody still using oil here? Okay, have we got a deal for you? There's about a 1.5 year payback on oil to a heat pump system. A 1.5 year payback. Yeah. This kind of shows you some of the economics here of a typical, to heat a whole home, about an 1,800 square foot home, it'd be about an $18,000 cost. But there's a $10,000 rebate associated with that. And so the after rebate cost would be less than $9,000. The savings every month are about $233 a month, and your payment to the municipal program is about $130 a month. So this is like a textbook example. It's cost you no money up front. The project pays for itself, and it's put money in your pocket every month. And so it's a great opportunity for homeowners. If you had an electric home, it's still pretty good, but not quite as good. The rebates aren't quite as big. But there's, with today's cost of electricity and just electric baseboard heating is expensive. Certainly going with higher efficiency heat pumps, we highly encourage that. And so we've seen Atlantic Canada leads the nation in heat pump adoption. So helping homeowners navigate through this, finding a good contractor, validating that they've got a good price too. So we help coach homeowners through what's a reasonable cost that they should be expecting. We have a vast database of costing on projects that really help kind of, I'm running out of time.
No.
Oh.
We have a question, though. Is it okay?
Sure,
Yeah,
sorry, yeah,
okay.
yeah.
No, I didn't know if you want your questions now or
Sure,
after. You
yeah,
said any
yeah,
time.
okay, yeah.
And being as though we're on heat pumps, is there an income though, household income dependent on getting that money for heat pumps?
Not on this. There are programs to provide free heat pumps up to a low income threshold. And so our energy concierge will, in discussions with homeowners, hey, if you qualify for free stuff, we want to get you into the free is better than financed.
That's right.
And so, but that $10,000 rebate, that's open to anybody at any income level.
Okay, that's the only thing I've been hearing down home. I've been getting calls on heat pumps and that. And some of them, the threshold is just, they're just not, they're above the threshold and not by much. The threshold is just at a minimum and,
It's very low, that threshold for free heat pumps, and it's certainly a great deal if you're very in a low-income situation, but that's not the majority of the population, and so we kind of want to help both demographics. If you are below that threshold, we get you into the program and make sure that you're getting that free. But for a lot of people, they're still struggling and they're over that. And so the economics here are showing really basically for our, a regular income person. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So this is kind of just some quick overview of kind of what we kind of communicate and talk to homeowners and really navigate them through. I think next slide. I think kind of from a community engagement perspective, we've seen this in every program we've run in Colchester and West Hants and Charlottetown. We're reaching about 2% of the homes every year. We're renovating or retrofitting 2% of the homes. And that doesn't sound like a lot, but these are deep energy retrofits. In Charlottetown, we have, I think, over 600 or 700 projects completed. So you can see kind of a map here, but if I showed you a map of Colchester, we see the same thing. And I think this is one of the unique things about communities in Atlantic Canada. Neighbors talk to neighbors. If the programming is a good deal for you're sharing the story and the lessons learned of the programming, and we encourage this kind of network effect as it takes off in the programming. So good program design, it's really exciting to see. In the energy efficiency space, and I've been at this for 30 years, 2% of the housing stock per year, and I think at Stratford it's almost 5%, so we're kind of conservative saying here 2%. But if you think about that, in 10 years, 20% of the housing stock will have reduced their energy consumption by maybe 50 to 60%. These are kind of the scale of activity that we need to be thinking about to get to net zero by 2040 or 2050 from a community perspective. And so these are kind of the low-hanging fruit from my perspective in the climate change equation. These projects pay for themselves, they create jobs, and they save homeowners money. They improve the conditions of the home as well, and the value in the home. So lots of exciting things, really, I would say, from a community engagement kind of perspective. Next slide. So one more slide, I think, kind of just what's your next steps. I think Brenda talked about it, like a funding application always helps to kickstart these programs. It de-risks it for you in the community, for us as program agents. So knock on wood, hopefully we're successful with that. I still want to call them UNSM. It just kind of shows how long I've been around. But the UNSM program, we should hear by late March or sometime in April would be my estimate. And we'd be looking at kind of kickstarting programming here in late April or May. I would say doing this jointly with your neighborhood municipalities has a lot of benefits. We saw the same sort of interaction in other programs where communities work together to kind of not only provide like governance and oversight of the programming, but when you think about community engagement and marketing and contractor engagement, contractors here in Tuscot are going to go to, do work in Barrington or, Clare and Yarmouth. And so like this community is kind of from a industry capacity and an engagement perspective, it makes a lot more sense. And we can lower the costs and lower the risks, I think, from that kind of regional approach. We are going to create, I think, something we call the Local Climate Leadership Council, where there's going to be representatives from each municipality. It kind of be providing some governance and program policy oversight. And there's lots of kind of sticky things that we have to get feedback on and direction upon, like what level of incentives and rebates we might offer to low income and, the ability to maybe change and be flexible about those, how we qualify people. So there's all kinds of different issues that really are really there and needed to be sort of from a governance perspective. I think number 4 is like for your CAO and where the rubber kind of hits the road. Well, what's it going to cost us? I think this is a pretty low investment. We're looking at probably a capital commitment of $25,000 a year in 2024 2024. It's already 2024. I guess your next fiscal and the year after. And with that, you will be able to leverage and create about $750,000 in investments in this community, or somewhere between about 50 and 80 homes. That's kind of the sort of a general ballpark, what I would see as sort of the size of the population and the sort of demographics in the community. We think those targets are very reasonable and achievable. So with that, I think coming soon. And if you have any more questions, I'd love to answer them.
Thank you very much. I always appreciate these presentations because you could have sent that in an email and we would have read it, but I find this just is more, it's more interactive and it gives us the chance to really, ask the questions we're thinking. Warden?
I think you might have answered my question. I was trying to figure out, like in that last slide where 25,000 a year, the loans wouldn't come from the municipality. We would contribute $25,000 a year towards the program, right? Like, they're not going to come to the municipality for loans.
No, what we do is we actually create a funding pool. So your capital will be part of that funding pool. You will get that money back. So like, this is not like, okay, a $25,000 operating cost. So it is part of the loan repayment. So it'll be a trickle over 10 years back from homeowners to repay the municipality. We really kind of design these programs, though. It certainly helps to get kickstart funding and to get these programs up to scale. But we spend a lot of effort and time really in designing programming that it can be sustainable over the long run. And so we think within 2 or 3 years of this programming getting off the ground, we can create kind of basically sustainable financing and funding. So a capital contribution for $25,000 a year for 10 years is, it's not insignificant, but it's not $750,000, the whole amount of, funding that would be needed annually here. And that would probably make your CAA gulp. So it is part of basically the funding equation for the loans. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Saulnier?
Thank you. You mentioned that there's 2 levels, there's free and then there's loan. Is there an in-between for those who are just above the free threshold, so to speak?
Yeah, our programming is kind of, we open the doors to everybody. And so part of that is navigating them through the energy concierge, through what's the best option for homeowners. We kind of set some of the things I didn't mention is we'll set some program caps on financing. So typically it's the lesser of $25,000 or 15% of the property value. In Colchester, they set a limit of 25% of the value of the property. So those are kind of, but typically it's about $40,000 cap, which usually can finance about 2 projects, a solar and heat pump project. That's like the most common. And we see 30% of the homeowners do multiple projects. I guess what I'm saying is the program will work for you no matter what circumstance you're in. And it's going to find the best way to help you prioritize that energy efficiency investment and talk about the best return on that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. CEO Muse?
Just to give information on, to council in terms of magnitude. So we do have a water lending program, as you know, and that is a full-on lending project. So this is the big difference between this project and if we did it ourselves, is that it's going into a fund where multiple people are funding this as opposed to just us. So $25,000 2 times, once per year, that's like 1.5 water loans a year. So if you're talking about 50 to 80 residents, it just goes to highlight the power of leveraging with a bunch of, I mean, there's other funders, there's other people being involved here. So I just want to give you that context because you see 25,000, it's like, well, even if it's a loan, you think it's a lot, right? But A water loan is 15, 18,000 one time. And so anyway, that's just the context.
Thank you. Councillor Boudreau?
Thank you. Great presentation, Julian. Just wondering, I'm just curious, I seen $18,000 for a heat pump, and I know you get like the rebate. What kind of heat pump are we talking about for $18,000? Is it central air?
That would probably be a mini split heat pump, about 2.5 to 3 tons. With multiple heads,
Yeah.
indoor heads. And so central ducted heat pumps tend to be a little bit more expensive,
Yeah.
like in the $20,000 to $25,000 range. They're not that typical in Nova Scotia, although we maybe less than 10% of the heat pump projects we're involved with
Yeah.
are those types. So,
Yeah.
but that's much more typical, is like the mini split type of heat
Yeah,
pumps.
I totally understand, but I find it pricey,
Yeah.
18,000. Anyways, thank you.
Yep.
I guess I'm wondering how would we get this information in our residents' hands? How would we make sure that they're aware of this program?
So lots of community-based marketing that we do. I think that one of the reasons why municipalities are really engaged in this is your ability to reach out and communicate with residents. So like in Colchester, we did a thing last year, we added things to the tax bill, a flyer, and we called it the flyer fire because we had like 300 calls in 2 weeks or something like that. That's one example of kind of stacking within the sort of general communication and community. You probably have a quarterly newsletter. Councilors are very, obviously engaged in talking to lots of residents. We hold pretty regular homeowner information sessions too, and typically we have 30 to 50 homeowners that come out to these. Lots of different avenues really for marketing and engagement in communities. And we also, homeowners educate the contractor who's giving them a price, and then we have contractors that educate homeowners too about some of their options. So there's all kinds of ways that sort of networking effect kind of takes off. And so, but certainly, your social media presence, Facebook and things like that, there's lots of things that we'll be working with the REN and your communication folks to kind of ensure that homeowners are aware of kind of the opportunities.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much for the presentation.
Well, thank you very much for the invite, and look forward to seeing you next time.
Okay, next on our agenda, number 5, we have adoption of minutes. So we have the minutes from January 11th of 2024 from our regular council meeting. Were there any errors or omissions to those minutes? Any issues with those? Seeing none, the meeting minutes will stand approved as they are. Next, we have staff reports. Number 6, 6A, department head report. There is an attachment. You've all had the chance to see the attachment. We don't have anybody here really from departments, but are there any questions? We get this mostly for information, just to kind of keep us updated. It is, yeah, definitely. Next, we have the clerk's report. I always like to see that there's not a lot of white on this report, a lot of orange. It's good. Any questions on that one? Okay, seeing none, we will go to the building permit report. Again, for information, any questions on that one? Okay, seeing none, we will continue on. Number 7, for decision and discussion. So 7A, we're looking at the second reading for the wind farm development agreement. So there is an attachment. We've seen this, this isn't our first time looking at this. We know that there has been an incredible amount of work that has gone into this project and all of the work that we have had for this. We've had several public engagement opportunities where we've listened to our residents. You know, we know that this process has been ongoing for a while. It's taken a while, but we've made sure that our residents have been informed every step of the way. We must remember as well that, you know, we made amendments to our land use bylaw before this project even came around to make sure that it protected our residents, because we know that we've had wind farm projects already. This is not our first one. And we've learned things, and we've realized what's important to our residents in terms of distance away from the turbines, in terms of noise and flicker and shadow and all of those things. So we've made sure that all of those pieces are well established. We all know this is a provincial project. The Department of Environment has been involved. I guess all of that is to say that we feel that Elemental has covered all of their bases. They've gone through with all the steps that they needed to go through, and they've followed all of our regulations. And we are now at a point where we've seen the development agreement, we've asked questions about the development agreement, we've had residents ask questions about the development agreement, and we're now at the point where do we feel like we're ready to pass the development agreement? So are there any questions or comments? And have I missed anything, CAO Muse? Okay. Councillor Surratt.
I'd like to move that we accept I think, I don't know if that's the way we should say it, accept the second reading of the wind farm development agreement.
Okay. Do we have a seconder of that motion? Seconded by our warden. Any questions or comments on that? Councillor Saulnier, go ahead.
Thank you. I have a 2-minute read here. It's more or less an acknowledgement. So I shall begin. As a result of the willingness from the residents of District 2 and 3 to accept the wind farm, we as a municipality and as residents of the municipality have a lot to gain. This project will benefit all of us for years to come, as it will the province with their green initiative. I informed a number of people in my district that council would most likely vote in favor of the wind farm, and that I would probably say no as a cautionary awareness vote to add attention and highlight their concerns. However, having attended 6 open houses and public hearings, while further talking with residents, and with the provisions in place in accordance with provincial guidelines, I feel comfortable in voting yes and confident that issues of concern would be dealt with swiftly and thoroughly. In plain English, and as our CAO has said in the past, this is a big deal. In the last 2 or 3 years, there has been extensive research and studies done to ensure strict compliance with provincial and municipal regulations which address and enforces the issues of concern. It is not perfect. Nothing usually is. It has its pros and cons, like most things do. The wind farm is a big project. It will generate revenue in the vicinity of $700,000 annually for the municipality, as well as an $80,000 yearly community fund. The project will bring positive changes and growth to our municipality and to its residents, and I say thank you to all involved. Some of you didn't like this project from the start, and yet you have reluctantly accepted it, and for that, I also thank you. I assure you, we understand and appreciate your apprehension, and will do all that needs to be done should any issue arise. It is in Elemental's best interest that the wind farm operate efficiently and without incident. I will remain committed and ready to assist you in any and all of your concerns, and I have great trust that our administration under our CAO will be there for you as well. Thank you.
Well said. Thank you for highlighting all those positive benefits to our community, not only environmentally, but you know there are all kinds of benefits to the community for this. So I appreciate you bringing all of that up.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on this? Okay, we have a motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded? Motion carried. Thank you. That was a big deal. That was a big deal. Counselor Surratt.
This may go to the CAO. So we've had second reading. So what, if you wouldn't mind, so people will know, what is the next step from here now?
It's an excellent question, and first of all, I want to say that these big decisions are not easy decisions, and I just want to say that I'm very proud to work for you today. The process is that the agreement will go to advertising as early as advertising will allow that to happen. There is a 14-day period of which an appeal may be brought to the attention of the UARB. I think you're familiar with that process because it has happened once before on the sea cucumber issue. On the appeal, you have to have an actual reason to appeal such a decision. When we went through this before, it was basically the question was, did the municipality follow its municipal bylaw and land use provisions when they made this decision? Or did they go offside to the rules that they have pre-established? Keep in mind, you have pre-established rules on setbacks and all these other nuisances around wind. And so you've passed the motion that you believed that it did, in fact, meet our rules. I'm not a lawyer, but I would agree. It does, because we've gone through legal review, and that particular question was asked. In absence of an appeal, which is the most likely scenario, the development agreement becomes official after that period, and it gets signed by both parties, and then it gets registered on the, well, it gets signed by all parties, which is not just two parties. There are multiple landowners that are named as well in the agreement. So they will also have to sign. And after that period of time, it will become it will allow them to go through the permit process, which is basically dealing with our development officer, our director of operational services, who is in here along with a colleague of his here tonight. Very interested in this, I'm sure. So it will go to them, and of course, the development agreement outlines the things that they need to do in getting a permit. Once a permit is issued, they're good to go. The significance of the agreement is that from a business perspective on Elemental's end is that they are able to provide that information to their funders. And that's an important element to make sure that it can be funded. It's a big project. So it does get registered on each and every land ownership. It is a registered document in the land registry. So that's approximately the process. So the process ends for you, except for the 14 days, but we then take control of the advertising requirements. That's a long answer. Good to be expected, I guess.
Okay. Next, we have 7B, Article P40, nepotism. So we had looked at this, it was several months ago, we had looked at a policy on nepotism, and there were some questions around that, and we made a motion to seek more clarification. So you will see on the attachment of the policy, there have been some changes made. So I guess, I'm assuming you've read that, and I'm just wondering how we feel about these changes. Do we feel like it's suitable? Are we willing to pass this tonight? Can we make a motion to approve it? What is the wish of council? Councillor Saunier.
I'd just like a little bit of clarity on 2.7 and 2.8. No, sorry, 2.8 and 2.9. Yeah, those 2 points.
So 2.8 reads, "The municipality reserves the right to exercise appropriate managerial judgment in order to take any actions necessary to carry out this policy's intent." And 2.9, "The municipality reserves the right to deviate from the guidelines outlined in this policy in exceptional circumstances." CAOs?
I'll do my best. The first 2.7, 2.8 is the first one. It's basically, it says that basically, in English, what that says is not every policy includes every little thing. And so what it's basically saying is that the municipality, as an organization, it's not specifying a CAO or any staff or anything in that matter. So it's in terms of who that is, it's not specific. So it could be a council decision, or it could be CAO bringing it to council. My interpretation would be that if we have exceptions to the rule, they would come to council, which is 2.8. So what it says is basically that in certain extraordinary circumstances, there may be judgment required. I'll pay an example on 2.8, okay? Let's say there is a sibling, they're the only person that applied for a position, and there are other circumstances that the staff could put in place to offset certain concerns that might be in place when a sibling works with another sibling. In those instances where you have no other option, you can't leave the position vacant, so you may have to make a decision to find an alternate way of that to work. So for instance, maybe that person just doesn't work for the sibling, but you're still not comfortable having brother and sister working, but they're not working for each other at least. There are exceptional circumstances where you have to take into account. That's 2.8. I'm backing up now into 2.7 again. Basically what it's saying is, sorry, wrong numbers. That was 2.9. That was the second one. I'm coming back to the first one, which is 2.8. Reserves the right to exercise managerial judgment in order to take any actions necessary to carry about the intent of the policy. So what that means is, what if something happens that isn't addressed in the policy? You apply the intention of the policy. What was the policy intending to do? Right? Well, it was intending to find a balance between hiring siblings in an appropriate way and not hiring people that are related in when it's an inappropriate way. So it's basically two judgment call paragraphs.
My confusion on this is that as council, you are the employer, and as council, we cannot interfere, can we? So it looks like in here, it's just kind of an exception that we may be asked to interfere. Am I reading that right?
I think if it relates to me, then you would absolutely interfere, because I'm your staff person, and municipality my definition of that would be that it was you. The CAO has discretion whether or not it would require your permission or discussion on the situation, depending on the situation. But 8 out of 10 times, it might be CEO's discretion. Under no circumstances, if it was ever anywhere close, would I be making a call without bringing that to the attention of council, because I know that the consequences of any decision might land on you. Even if it's not your direct responsibility, your ultimate responsibility is to the people. So that would be how I approach it. If you're not happy with that, we can certainly either amend it slightly now or later. I would recommend that if we do try to want to build that out a bit, we can do it like in the future, because the issue I have with no nepotism policy like this now is that it goes back to a really old policy, which is actually not cool. And we've been kind of sitting on this one for a while. We wanted to kind of bring it forward. I don't want to rush a decision. I'm just saying you have the option to make this amendment at any time. You don't have to wait. You can do it later if you wish, if you feel an amendment is necessary.
Any other questions? Is somebody willing to make the motion to pass this policy? Councillor Surratt?
I make the motion to accept the policy as presented.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on that? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded, motion carried. Next, we have 7C, requests for lighting consideration, Argyle Schools. So we did get an email a while ago, actually January 15th, from our CAO, and I'm just going to, in case you're thinking, okay, I read that, but I don't remember what that's about, it's very short, very brief. I'll just reread that. So it was sent from our CAO, and it says the purpose is to write a letter to the MLA asking to lead a request for provincial institutions to consider their lighting strategy and an adjustment to dark sky compliant lighting. As we are still without a bylaw, our letter would be to invite a conversation and ask them for leadership on their existing facilities in the county. So would you like to add anything more to that, CAO Muse? You're good? That's what you're looking for?
Yeah, it's mostly, I know that new construction in Wedgeport has taken this into account with the lighting and everything, but there are other schools that pre-exist that have lighting. We don't have a bylaw, saying you got to do this, but it might be a really good idea to write to our partner, our provincial partner, and say, look, we're looking at, light pollution here, and wouldn't it be nice if you consider the same things on your existing schools you did in your old? That's basically it. It's just a letter.
Questions or comments? Is anybody willing to make a motion to that effect? Councillor Digdon?
Not so much questions, I guess, as comments. I actually, this evening, when I left home, I went to École Pubnico West, and that they have 2 streetlights going down to the school, and they have about 3 lights on inside the school at night. Drumlin School doesn't look to be a whole pile of lights up around there. I don't know if there's an overabundance of lights or not. 6 deer walking around up there tonight at 6 o'clock. École Belleville, 7 lights on around the school, 2 street lights going up by the school. The one down by the tennis court is out. And Paramba seems to be a school with the most lighting, but also it's the building, I'd say, with the most going on in the municipality. And right now, there's this, even with the lights that are on down there, there's been vehicles doing power turns in the parking lot down there. There's a lot of on level ground down there for people walking, speed bumps, broken pavement, potholes when you get off the pavement and that. I'm definitely for, trying to cut down on light pollution or whatever, but if it's a cost to safety, I'm definitely not for it. Safety is paramount as far as I'm concerned. I went as far as talking to one of the bus drivers that drive and at some of these schools, and like he was telling me, there's times when they get to the school early in the morning, and you may know more about that than I do. It's just at a bad time. It's the time where it's not daylight, but it's not dark yet, so it's just where you have to be really careful. Little kids, he said, shooting out behind cars that are being dropped off and that. So I just, I think this one is one that we may want to look at, but at the same time, we want to tread carefully on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Warden Muse?
I have to agree that the lighting around these schools is important, but what I'm wondering is the type of lighting that they have. Sometimes it's not that you don't want them to have the lighting that they need, but they may have the type of lighting that will produce more light pollution than that they could replace some of those lights, still be lit properly as far as safety-wise, but with a much less impact on the dark skies. Because, like you said, I don't think I wouldn't want lighting to be reduced to the point where all of a sudden it's a hazard. These are schools. And they get to school in the dark now. I mean, it's not like before when we went to school. You left during daylight and you came home during daylight.
In the snow.
Anyway, pardon me?
In the snow, up to your,
Or in the snow,
walking
yeah.
uphill.
Yeah, snow. I don't remember too many snow days, but.
They're wonderful.
But anyway, just want to point that out, that it could be a matter of changing the type of light that they have to reduce the pollution.
Thank you, Warden. Councillor Sonia?
I had a complaint from Plymouth about the Plymouth school, and that the lighting was extremely poor. Come to find out, these school light itself had burnt out or gone out. They weren't functioning. And so the place was quite dark and quite dangerous. I never realized there was no actual streetlights. The school, the Plymouth School, as you know, is very, very close to the road in proximity. So when they have functions with the limited parking lot they have, they park alongside the road. So when these lights went out, there was no lighting on the road at all. It was extremely dangerous for people to walk to their vehicles, especially with small kids, being in elementary school and such. So to look at the schools in general, I think is a good idea. I'll back that up 100%. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Digdon?
Thank you very much. After my spiel, I will make a motion that we do write a letter to our MLA to look at the lighting around the schools. And the big thing, though, as long as it does not impede the safety of the people that's around the schools or using the schools. And I'll make that a motion.
Okay, do we have a seconder?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any questions on that? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded? Motion carried. All right, let me go back to the agenda. Next, we have 7D, letter of support request from the CDN. We have an attachment. So they are looking for a letter from us they're applying for funding for an immigration program for Francophone, having Francophone people come to our area. They outline 3 benefits. There's benefits, of course, to the people coming in to provide employment. There's benefits to our Francophone area because we'll have more Francophone people. And then the third one, I had wrote it down, I can't remember. The employers, the residents themselves, the employers also who need those workers. So they're looking right now for a letter of support from us for this. What is the wish of council on this one?
I would move that we write a letter of support to CDN.
Thank you. Okay, questions or comments on that? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded, motion carried. Next, we have, I saw that before I was looking here. Next, we have, for E, letter, we're looking for a letter to the Department of Public Works for painting of a Wedgeport crosswalk. And this one is Councillor Boudreau.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to make a motion that we write a letter, Department of Public Works, to paint our crosswalk. And earlier, me and Scott, our deputy CAO, were talking about, I'm not sure if the crosswalk is going to be the same once the new school is in, but I'd still like to get that one painted because by the time they decide to make a new crosswalk, it'll be time to paint the old one again. So I'd like to make that motion.
Do we have a seconder on the motion? Any
Thank
questions
you.
or comments? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Next, we have another F. Department of Public Works, again, a request to revisit the Creamy Street intersection. This was brought up at the end of our meeting last meeting by Councillor Borks. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to send a letter to the Department of Public Works to request another revisit to the Creamy Street, which is in Pummigo Head. And that area, I've had complaints from the citizens from there. People doesn't look like they're going to stop, and then they're zooming up the other way. It's like a 3 intersection, and it's a very tricky place. So I think it should be revisited, maybe more stop signs, or we did have a tracker. They did lower the speed limit to 60, but 60 is not working. I went there to a business and I sat there and I watched, and it's true. They're coming on the 3, they're going towards Argyle, and they're turning to go up to Argyle again, and they're just pressing on her. And there's there's houses and things that are close to the road. So I think it should be revisited and send a letter to do this. So thank you for your attention.
I was just going to say, are you making that a motion?
I'm making that
Yes,
motion.
okay, and it's seconded? Okay. Any questions or comments on that? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary-minded? Motion carried. G, Fire Services Review Consultant. Before I press the button, CAO Muse, we had a meeting here last night. So we had firemen come in last night, fire chiefs and the deputies and fire association members. And I mean, for a long time, we all know this as counselors, we've been talking about our fire services and what's working well and what needs improvement and how can we help. And CAO Muse said it very well at the meeting last night. They came up with their own strengths and challenges, and he said, but we don't know what to do to help. And that's why things have kind of remained stuck. So there is a potential solution, and it would be to hire somebody to come in and do a review of our fire services. And that is at a cost of $50,000. His name is Jamie Coombs. Coots, thank you. And so he would come and do a review of the fire services and tell us what is working well and he would give us recommendations as to what would best suit our 9 fire departments. So that went around the table last night as a discussion, and everybody there was in favor of having this done. They're ready. They're ready to see change. They know change has to happen. There was a bit of a conversation around, well, if we spend the $50,000, we have to make sure that we listen to, the recommendations. And some people said that might not be easy to do, but it's very important. So in the end, the question was asked, how do you feel about it? And they are on board for this. So what we would like to do is pass a motion to have this done. I think I covered everything. Okay. Would you like to?
I think people are going to be eager to make a motion here, so I'm going to take 4 seconds. I think we want to remind ourselves that it's one thing to say we want a fire review. It's another thing to understand what that means for municipalities. The fire departments may not be able to solve their problems themselves, which means there may be hard decisions around funding and financing in the future based on those recommendations. I just want to make that abundantly clear. But you made that decision a year ago, and I think I trust, and I know that that's what you had in mind at that time, because you knew that the review isn't going to say everything is roses. You knew that you would have to put some additional investments in certain areas. And I would say that certain investments you may have to accelerate, do them all at once at the beginning. There are things that maybe you planned on doing over 5 years, you might plan on doing over 3. There's all sorts of things that this could result in, but that's why you save money, right? That's why you have reserves. That's why you set aside for rainy days. It's going to rain. So we have to take a look at that situation. I'm not going to make you already know what the recommendation is. I've had direct conversations with Jamie, and it's the right firm. The only thing that I would say is that we budgeted for 30 this year. It might cost us 80 all in, because disbursements from Alberta aren't cheap, and they talk to every person. So they take their good time, and they do their work when they're here. The good news about that is that it takes about 2 months for them to actually produce a result. So where, other places it's taken 7, 8 years for them to come up with recommendations because they were relying only on their volunteer firemen, which, God bless them, did a tremendous job. It just, you can't do the work in a short period of time. So this is accelerating the work. That's all I have to say about it. For those of you who you were all invited, for those of you who were able to make it, thank you very much. You heard it from the horse's mouth. No offense, of course, districts 1 and 2. Or 2 and 3, sorry. This is kind of a bad joke, but anyway. Je la parenté. Anyway, so that's basically all I'd have to say about that. So,
Thank you. Councillor Surratt?
I'd like to make a motion that we invest the money into getting the consultant, Amy Coates, to do this review.
Thank you. Questions or comments on that motion? Councillor Sonia?
Just to make the public a little clear on what the firemen want, I asked that question last night. What is the training you need? What is it you want? And from my understanding, what they told me or told all of us was that they're not united in terms of training, and that they're professionals, but they're professionals is not binding. They're not together, and they need to be together when they fight big fires and stuff like that. And with not just our municipality, but with others. So I just want to make that clear to the public, why we're spending this money, is to help them be the professionals they are. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded, motion carried.
Is there a second motion there that we need to make?
The second motion is hardly required, because it's basically instructing me to put a number in the budget, which is kind of meaningless because you're gonna pass the budget or not pass it. So you don't require that motion. It's there in case you want to do it, but at least you understand that we have to set money aside, and that's really the key.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have under H, seasonal dwelling garbage collection. So under that one, there is an attachment. So we had a resident who is, primary residence is in Yarmouth, but they have a seasonal dwelling in our municipality. And when they go to their seasonal dwelling, they take their garbage with them, they bring it back to Yarmouth just so that animals don't get into it, et cetera, et cetera. But they feel like because they're doing that, they're paying taxes, and they feel like, the taxes, that's one of the services that we offer, but they feel like they should get a rebate on that because they are taking their garbage with them, and they're not there all the time. So in the attachment, you have seen that this has been discussed many times. As far back as 1996, there were motions made where there was originally a flat rate proposed for that. And then in 1996, it changed again. And anyway, I'm sure you've all read it. So we have a couple of options that we can do here. We can either, option one is write back to the resident, thanking them for their concern, but letting them know that we have explored this one time and do not wish to explore it again at this time. Or our second option would be to have staff look at exemptions for garbage collection on taxes for the 2025, 2026 tax year. And there are two possible motions on this as well. So this is up for some discussion. Councillor Digdon.
Thank you. I'd like to go with, I'd make a motion that we go with option one. Write back to the resident, thanking them for the concerns, but council explored this at one time and does not wish to explore it again at this time.
Okay, do we have a seconder on that motion? Seconded, okay. Any questions or comments on that? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded? Motion carried. Did you have what you needed for that one?
Absolutely.
Okay, good.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next. I, first reading, short-term accommodation bylaw. Oh, so we have a small presentation by our deputy CAO, and there was an attachment as well. So this is a policy, or bylaw, sorry, that's come up, bylaw 42, short-term marketing levy. All right, we've got some conflicts of interest. All right, you know how to clear a room, Scott. Go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I guess I cleared the room, but I have a short presentation. I know tonight's dragging a little bit, but this is important, and it's something that was discussed at this table a few times. I know Councillor Dothermall from the YASTA brought it up a few times. And also Neil McKenzie, when he was doing a presentation, did share that with us. And I'd like to thank Neil for coming in today. He's here kind of being my support, because if there's more technical question around the bylaw, he may be able to answer some of those. So he's here on standby, and I appreciate that. Why are we bringing this up is, again, it's around, one is the government has made amendments to the MGA that permits the municipality to do a marketing bylaw. With Bill 204, they've changed the laws that we can do that. But speaking again with Neil, it's kind of to bring fairness in the Yarmouth County, where it's not new to the town, nor is it new to Modi. They already had the levy. and they were collecting it, and it was going to Yasta to promote tourism. So our folks in the municipality of Argyle were actually getting rewarded from this levy that was being collected from the town and Modi, because Yasta was promoting our area and doing some stuff for our area, and our operators were actually benefiting from that. So it kind of brings some fairness if we were to bring this in. Next slide, yeah. So what is the marketing levy? So it's a fee charged to tourism or to tourists or buyers for an accommodation. So that's basically the cost of your rooms, plus some service fees or option fees. Like if you have an Airbnb, there could be like cleaning fees and stuff like that. So it would be on top of that. But just to kind of explain it a little bit more is, so that you understand, it would not include if you had a package deal. So if you were to purchase maybe a package deal from the old Argyle, and the room, let's say, was $100, there might be like a $50 for a meal and $200 for a kayak trip. The levy would only be charged on the accommodation, the room itself, okay? In my presentation, I basically just highlighted what's in the bylaw so that we can kind of skim through the summary here, and you can ask questions after. But basically, the levy is 3%, so that's what the operators would be asking the tourists to pay. That is the maximum you can pay out that's allowed through the MGA. Application for marketing levy. So as I mentioned, the levy would be charged on the purchase price of the accommodation, which I just explained. Operators collecting the levy must remit on a regular basis or a monthly basis to the municipality. So when they collect it, they would need to submit their levy to us on a monthly basis, the way it's worded now. However, there are exemptions to the bylaw. Folks that would have operations that would be asking purchase price of less than $20 would not need to charge the levy. Student accommodation, we really don't have any in our area, but if Saton would form a dorm, maybe that could apply, so it's good to have it there. A person who's staying longer than 28 days, you wouldn't have to charge the levy because it's no longer considered a short-term stay, right? If it's anything over 28 days, it's defined in the MGA, I believe that it's any short-term stay is 28 or less. And if people are traveling for medical reasons, there's language around that you don't have to charge a levy, so. The registration, so every operator that would be registered with the province, because everybody needs to be registered with the province, would still need to be registered through us. And even if they had multiple units, they would have to have multiple registration with us so that we know when the money's coming from, we know from which Airbnb or Verbo, whatever they are, so which one's coming in. So just kind of keep track. Or need, this one, yes, I just talked about that. If they close, they need to cancel their registration with us. And every operator who is registered shall be subject to a regular fire inspection. I will share that the language that you saw in the bylaw currently is very similar to what the town has passed for first reading and what Modi has passed. However, this last piece that I just mentioned is something new to our policy that our protective services, Renee and François' team, thought that it was very important that we would do a fire inspection for these Airbnb, because currently we don't do that. So we are putting this in our bylaw, and we are going to change our fire inspection policy. You will see that probably in the next couple of months. We will add some language that is included in this, but I think it's very important that we do an inspection and check, for smoke detectors, make sure that the windows are large enough in case a fire would happen. But I think it's important that we have that. Remittance, I talked about that operators would be collecting, and they would have to submit on the 15th of the month. Even if they don't collect during a month, so let's say an Airbnb would close down shop maybe for the month of December and January because it's not busy, they'd still have to let us know that they didn't collect any levy, so we can kind of keep track of it. Records, the operator must keep record of all the sales and marketing levy collected, and they must keep record of it for at least 7 years. Other topics in the bylaw that, again, I'm just kind of highlighting, there's language around there how a refund would be handled with an operator in the municipality. The levy collected would only be used to promote tourism initiatives. It talks about the interest rate that we would be using on delinquent accounts, that audits can be made by somebody appointed by the municipality, and tentatively, the effective date of this bylaw would be April 1st, 2024, if all goes well. So the next steps, obviously tonight is consideration for the first reading. Because it's a bylaw, we would need to post or advertise this in the Vanguard, because that's kind of an MGA request. It needs to be there for 14 days before it could go to the second reading. But I think what we should do, is that we should do, it's an information session, I would say, with all the operators. So currently, we get a list from the province. All those operators are currently registered with the province because they have to, that's the law. We get that list, so we know there's over 50 in the municipality of Argyle now. So we would reach out to them, plan the information session. If they want to come, they can come. If not, and we kind of go through this. And I would probably ask Neil to attend that also, because he's a little more technical on those pieces. And then we would get to the second reading. And that's it, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. I see that Councillor Boudreau has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wondering, Scott, say the Airbnb is owned by an American and living in America. Are they registered through the province, or does the Airbnb, how does that work?
Good question. And I may look to Neil to make sure that I've got this right, but anyone that owns one of these Airbnbs in our area would have to be registered through the province.
Through the province.
I don't think it really matters where you are at. So.
Okay, perfect, thank you. So if this levy comes into effect April 1st, whatever, he'll get notified?
Yes,
Yeah,
we
I'm
would
sure.
reach out
Yeah.
to him. Plus, he needs to register with us. Like, the bylaw will force him to register with us.
Okay,
And we'll reach out to him to explain those
Okay.
pieces, yes.
okay, good,
Yeah.
thank you.
Councillor Sonia?
Thank you. So this levy is being directed for tourism.
Correct.
Is that going to be tourism in general, or is it more marketed towards these things in general?
So there is language in regards to this in the bylaw, and that gives the council a choice. But currently, how it's working is that the levy is collected by the municipality and is given to YASTA as our regional tourism association that kind of oversees and promotes our area. But again, in our area, we currently fund YASTA, but there also is another association, BOTA, that's in our area too. So there's two pieces to consider here.
Okay.
Councillor Bork?
Yeah, thank you. This might be outside of the topic, but probably inside the topic as well. We're having our Congress coming this summer, and I'm thinking maybe that people might have to open their houses to accommodate some people coming in. So how would that work, like for a week? If you're going to open your house to receive people or some people might just give their house for a week or something like that. No, so how would that work?
That's a technical one.
Well, it's a great question. I think if it's friends and family, so it depends if there's a financial
No, say if it's
transaction.
not
right?
friends and family. Say you're just opening your house, you've got for opening your house or your cottage or whatever.
Well, if you were to ask the province would say if you're offering accommodations, you need to be registered under the Tourism Registry Accommodations Act. But that would be a black and white answer, and we know that that happens occasionally. So I think with events like that where Airbnbs and all accommodations in the region will be at capacity anyway, there won't be any issues with operators that are licensed and have rooms available versus folks offering rooms that aren't licensed. are registered. So I guess the official answer would be they should be licensed and registered, but where they will probably be a one-off type of thing, I would be surprised if everybody did that.
Okay.
I just wanted to clarify a point too, that, so the levy in the town has been the one that's being collected. That's consists of 4 of the major hotels that are 20 rooms or more. That's been happening since 2007. Those funds have been collected and then remitted to the town. The last year or so, the True by Hilton has voluntarily, by way of a separate agreement with the town, started to contribute to the levy as well. So they're not even required to do it, but they're doing it because they see the value in regional tourism, marketing, events, et cetera. But the levy doesn't, I don't think Scott was trying to suggest this, but I want to clarify, that the levy funds don't directly flow to YASTA. The funds from the levy are provided to YASTA by way of grant, in the same way that Municipality of Argyle grants us funds every year. I present our year end and our financials and our books and then our plans for the next year and say, this is what we need to achieve our goals. And then each municipality funds equally that amount of our budget. But that amount also is not, it's not even a quarter of our budget currently because we're able to effectively leverage those dollars coming from the Municipality of Argyle, for example, the Hotel Association. We're able to leverage that with federal and provincial and private sector dollars to enlarge our budget and spend more money on marketing and events.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Digdon?
Thank you. Just, and I know you can't give me an exact number here by no means, but the marketing levy, how much do you figure it may generate from the Municipality of Argyle?
Sure, so we were looking at that today. So we have some tools where we can look at, because this is a percentage, it would be based on revenue. So the difference too with the town of Yarmouth and the new levy that's coming in, the town of Yarmouth, it used to just be $2 static rate, regardless of the amount you charged me for your room. You also collected $2. But now it's a percentage, so it depends on the average rate that the rooms are sold for. That's a metric in tourism called average daily rate. And the average daily rate for Argyle, we were looking today, is approximately $141 per night for Airbnb, for accommodations that are on the Airbnb platform. Not all accommodations are on that platform, so like for example, the Red Cap, they may be on Airbnb, but I'm not sure. But they also advertise their own rooms and sell their own rooms directly. So they may not be included in that. But as a ballpark, $141 would be the average. And we looked and we thought there was approximately 4,000 rooms sold last year in the Municipality of Argyle. So, you know, you won't, I wouldn't assume 100% remittance because I just wouldn't assume that. I think that there's going to be always a little bit less than the number would say, but those would be the two metrics that you could estimate would give you. And I think we said 16,000 perhaps, in addition to what your yearly contribution is to YASTA now. So, and that will move up and down with the market as the market fluctuates. So when business is big and good, you know, the Congrès, the average daily rate during the Congrès will increase 100%. I'm already seeing that. A lot of the calls we're getting and inquiries we're getting at through our website and other ways is people are looking for rooms, and we're starting to push it, and you can also see that they're booking Airbnbs well ahead. So it's good because we know they're coming and the business is on the books already, which is great to see.
Thank you. If I may have a follow-up.
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you. And so you're looking at a 3% rate for the Municipality of Argyle.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is the town of Yarmouth and the Municipality of Yarmouth on the same, going to be on the 3% scale?
They've all moved all three of their first readings have all, they're very, very similar bylaws. The intent was that would be the case because we wouldn't want a visitor visiting Yarmouth and then having a 2% rate and then visiting Argyle and having a 3% rate. The 3% is in the MGA legislation, and most municipalities that are implementing levies throughout the province are maxing it out at 3% because, and 3% is actually quite low. When you look at our source markets, like New England or Bar Harbor, for example, which is over 8% US.
No,
Most places, we've all traveled, you probably see these on your receipts, these accommodations taxes and other things like that, so.
Yeah, no, thank you. I was just looking for fairness across the board. that's
Yeah,
all.
absolutely, that's the intent.
Thank you.
I like the idea of having a public, like a meeting for information. I think that's important. I think, though, that'll be tough if you're looking for April 1st. Hopefully, you're going to have to put the gas on to get that in, but I think that will be important. Sorry.
Yeah, no, you're right, the timing and all that stuff, plus putting the ad out, we need to put it out for 14 days and all that stuff, so, yeah, definitely, there's a challenge with timing, yes.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? So this is first reading. Yep, we need a motion, if we're okay with this, is somebody willing to make a motion to accept? Okay. Okay, for first reading, moved and seconded. Questions on that? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded? Motion carried. Sure. Next, J, Joint Police Advisory Committee recommendation. There is an attachment, and I know that both Councillor Boudreau and Councillor Bourque are on the police committee. So on the attachment, there is a section that is highlighted, and that is the recommendation that they are asking for. So let me just find it here. That Argyle and Yarmouth councils correspond with the Nova Scotia Department of Justice, CCing the NSFM and JPAC, requesting the draft terms of reference for the Provincial Policing Services Review be submitted to Police Advisory Committee in Nova Scotia for review and feedback, and that the Argyle and Yarmouth councils correspond with the Nova Scotia Department of Justice, affirming a desire for the JPAC. These acronyms are getting longer and longer all the time, aren't they? To actively engage in the provincial policing priorities process. Councillor Boudreau or Bourque, do you guys have anything that you would like to add to this? Okay. So what is the wish of council? You'd like to make the motion? Okay, do we have a seconder on that motion? Okay, questions on that? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded, motion carried. Okay, Research and Knowledge Initiative application, and it says housing. So I typically like to try something, but this one, I'm not sure because it came a little bit later, so CAO Muse, you go ahead.
Fafreta first of all.
You're
It's cold
sick.
in here. Really, it's just me?
Yeah.
All right, I did sneeze and stuff, so yeah,
Yes.
here we go, down that road. Yeah, I got the COVID, as my mother would say. Nothing like mispronouncing words as a Frenchman, as a French Acadian woman. I'm going, yeah, I have a seat somewhere. Sorry, first of all, apologies for the late ad on this, but things happen quickly, things move quickly. So I want to just follow through on council's desire to engage in housing initiatives for the area. We've had this conversation a number of times strategically. We said we need to look at housing, we look at growth. I'm not going to go through the strat plan line by line to remind or but it's a big issue, and that the policies federally and provincially are identifying, housing's a real issue. In certain urban areas, it's a very big issue where there's tent cities and other things that we're a bit more fortunate in how we see our communities now, but we could see that change, and some of our residents may not be in tents or other situations of poverty in that level, but they might be couch surfing, they might be doing other things that are quietly dealing with housing deficits in this area. So we know that if we're going to grow our population, the first thing is to give them options to actually live in this area. We've seen the market value explode over the last couple of years. We also know that our interested parties include both migration, immigration, youth, seniors. There's a long list of of residents either already living here, seeking alternate forms of living, or looking to move here because they're professionals or because they want to be working in this area and they can't find a suitable place to live. We see this often. We see this on doctor recruitment, where they want to seek housing for people who come in both temporarily or permanently, and that's even a problem. I like to talk about our seniors, especially because I see it in my own situation with my mother who lives alone, and oftentimes men or women or both, coupled or widowed, are in homes, and eventually those homes become very difficult to manage. And they're beautiful homes. They're homes that they raise children in, and it's sized for that, and the property is or was beautiful. But at some point, it becomes people become unable to handle it. Now, if they don't have an option to live somewhere else, they're not leaving. They're not leaving that location, and those problems escalate. So at the end of the day, our housing stock is predominantly ownership. There's very little rental, and our stock, as the provincial government indicated, is short and will be short as much as 220 units by 2034. I believe that's the year, 2034. So we got a hell of a job to do if we're going to be involved in this one. And a couple of things that I want to talk about that I've talked about before, and I'm going to remind you again because they have financial implications. The shared service agreement with the province of Nova Scotia indicated that there were some expenses that would be eliminated on our bottom line. One was housing, and when I say housing, I mean we were paying $50,000 to the government of the province of Nova Scotia every year to fund 10% of the deficits of our housing, affordable housing units here in the community. The closest one is the one in Tuscott here, where people go in and they make application for what is subsidized housing, and they pay up to 30% of their rent, and that's what they pay. So, the rent is 30% of their income, and so if their income is $50,000, it's 30%. If it's $10,000, it's 30%. So those rooms are even quite hard to get into it these days, as you are probably aware. So we used to fund that, and now we do not. So that's $50,000 that money eliminated from our coffers. So that's now provincial money. The other one was the corrections, which is about corrections payments to the province of Nova Scotia. We have absolutely zero control over that, and they would charge us up to $115,000 a year. So between those two, we've cost avoided about $170,000, $165,000 a year. And what we're proposing is that we take all of the housing investments that we were making before and shift them into local housing initiatives. What do I mean? I mean that if we're going to bring the units that the province says we're short of, we need action, and we need on-the-ground action in order to make that happen. And specifically, our rental stock is extremely low. As Kyle Boudreau, Director of Operating Services, would say, if we're short 220 units and we got to get them in 8 years, there's no way we can build 220 houses. This is about rental. This is about multi-unit rental. And this is about attracting developers into our community to do that. Either they're already here, or we need to entice and attract those investors that are doing it in other places to think Argyle. So there's a lot of work to do in that process. And it's pretty daunting. It's a big job. My report says it's a big enough job that nobody that we hire here could do it well. We could do it kind of like the same logic of those volunteer firemen doing a review. It would take them 7 years to get it done. Well, we need 220 units in 8 years, so that's kind of inconvenient. So speed is not on, time is not on our side. Speed must be on our side. And all of this to say that in our initial examination, we came upon Research Knowledge Initiative funding opportunity through the federal government. It asks for projects no smaller than 200,000. Their funding is approximately 70% of a project, but that would depend on the size of the project. What I'm proposing is essentially three things. One is an acknowledgement that we have a problem and that we need to address that problem, and that we can address that problem financially without putting any undue burden on our taxpayers, because we're going to use a section, not the whole thing, not even like only a section of that, to invest into a part-time person, which would be a new position for the municipality of Argyle. Call it housing coordinator. That's just a name. I don't know if that's the actual final name, but that's what that position would do. They would be supported by a nationally reputable consulting firm that would give raw data on housing. And when the province has given us data on what we need to do, but it's how we do that is different. So the province might say you need 220 units by 2034. A study coming from a Colliers, Project Leaders, or similar company would say something like, and this is your affordability match, right? So your people can afford ranges of this to that. They desire and require homes that look like this or that. That doesn't come from a study from the province. That comes from somebody delving into the data deeply. And that comes from experts in that field. It doesn't come from municipal staff that could miraculously come out with something like this. The approximate cost of something like that, it could be between $50,000 and $80,000. It's not a small thing. The result of those consultations would be a comprehensive plan of action that we don't expect them to execute. We would expect staff to execute. And part of that would include community consultation, going direct to developers, enticing development, identification of locations where development can occur, identification of French-Acadian specific issues that might exist in certain communities, women at risk, that could be issues around housing and housing alternatives. We got to look at that, and we got to have somebody that can hustle that. So I think those are three things. Well, actually, the third thing is permission to make the application, which is one of the motions that I'm suggesting. What does this all mean for the municipality? I mean, the application, we typically don't ask permission to apply for money. We usually like that. The problem with it is that we can't ask for anything less than $200,000, and that means that 25% of that number would have to come from us regardless. The second reason why I bring it up now is that what if we don't get the funding? What are we going to do? And my position on that, respectfully, is that we need to do something regardless. And we would have to do maybe a light version of what I just proposed, around like a heavy data collection followed by hiring of a part-time person. That would have to be revised, because we now are only using our own money, and we have to be conscious of that. The other thing, hiring this position that you get benefits from, is that this person would constantly look for housing funding outside of this one, and they exist. There's a ton of them. So this person could find initiatives and navigate additional funding opportunities for housing and housing-related issues. They would also be a navigator for developers. So if developers were, let's say, a Del Mar was interested in getting into the rental business but doesn't know where to start, has identified obstacles, this person would navigate and make sure those obstacles are overcome, would inform a Del Mar or a Garion or any other local or non-local organization of the benefits of construction, like no HST, here are the other grant opportunities you might have. And then they would also look at our own municipal infrastructure and say, there are areas where municipalities can encourage this kind of growth without actually giving the money to the developer. There are ways where you can bring sewer to them or other kind of municipal infrastructure that you can do, and you do. You have done it. You have business parks that do it. You do it all the time. It's your business to do that. So that's a long story to say I'm proposing that the municipality of Argyle, in their 24-25 budget, put in approximately $106,000, which would be more than enough in the case that we had the funding. That would be reduced if we didn't have the funding. And more specifically, permission to apply for the funding, which obviously, if you believe that we should invest in this, then you're obviously going to believe in trying to get somebody else to pay for it, right? And the third piece is permission to create a new position, a new, and I've said this before, my responsibility is to hire and fire and do all of those things around existing positions, but new positions are for you. I can't fill in a new position even if I thought it was a great idea. That's for council to decide and for me to execute that decision. So that's really, when you look at the motion, that's what I'm talking about. The deadline for the application is February 9th, I believe. And we may have to engage some external assistance to make sure that our application is good. We're going to do a lot of it internally. And I think that's the end of my little spiel. If there are any questions or if you, I'm here and yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Saunier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Alain, you and I have discussed in the past actually hiring someone to look for grants in a different capacity that you're mentioning now. So, and I always thought it might be a good idea to get someone like that to leverage money rather than use our own. It makes good sense. With this person you're talking about hiring for housing, could this person be used for other grant applications if the need may come, yeah?
Absolutely. Right now, I would propose a part-time hire, 2 to 3 days a week, kind of a hybrid model, work from home, work from here, not a full-time position at this time because if we're going to do a plan, that plan has to roll in before we bring that person in, right? They can't just come in and say, well, hey, what's going on? That person will have high credentials, which the other thing is full-time might be very expensive. We are targeting certain people. We're, rattling some chains a little bit to see who might be out there, and we have some ideas. The slower answer is yes, absolutely. That person could be used for other grants. What I like about this one is that if this isn't your number one priority, like if this isn't your number one thing on strategy, it's number two. It's very, very high up there because of the dire need of it now, not just here but nationally. And this person targeting housing would certainly be successful. And if they were good at it, they would be successful at potentially finding other funding opportunities, such as active transportation or other such opportunities. We hired a community development officer by the name of Brenda Lagrandeur. You might have seen her here today earlier. And I remember having making a pitch or an argument for the position because the first time we had a community development officer for the municipality of Argyle. And one of the things that I said was, she will pay for herself. And she did.
Yeah, but that's my point.
Yeah.
If you get the right person doing the right job, might be worth his weight in gold, so to speak.
Correct. Yep.
Thank you.
Gordon.
So, I don't know if I understood right. This position, did you say we have to apply? We have to apply. Is there funding to pay for that position?
The funding application would include funding for this position at 70%, correct?
At 70%?
Yeah, as
okay.
well as other expenses that would be associated with an initiative like this.
Right, yeah. And this person, I mean, we can, if we had a person like that could come up with funding that's available, that right now we're not really pushing that type of searching for that type of money, right?
Correct.
And if we can get that, but is the funding that when it comes to housing, I know there's initiatives out there from both governments, or they're saying, so that there is something out there that's available. I think the problem is it depends on, they're having a hard time with developers, because developers, if you're looking at developers to build affordable housing, that's always an issue with developers, because they're not in the business for that. They're going to build something. And sometimes what happens is the initiatives that they get from the government is not worth their while in order to take that. They're better off not taking the money and renting out, especially at the cost of rent that's out there right now. Affordable housing is very, very hard to define. The way it's calculated, from what I understand, is to take the cost of rental places or the rental costs that's out there, and then they drop it a certain percentage and which makes it lower than what's out there from a developer who has his own, but it's still not affordable to a lot of people, especially when you go with the rental costs that's out there right now, right? What I would like to see in this area is another place like we have in Tuscan and we have in Wedgeport that are subsidized. Subsidized housing, to me, is a much better fix for what the problem that we have right now. Whether the government would do that, I don't know, but I mean, there's waiting lists to get into these, right? So anyway, that would be if we get something like that from the government, I think that would be very, very helpful for a lot of people that are looking for places, for sure. And it's subsidized. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Bork.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with the warden. I think subsidized, I mean, that's a priority for the province to have housing. So why aren't they building more places like this? I mean, if they're not there to make a profit, they're there to have people staying as long as they come even. I mean, what's there to lose? So I think the province should step up a little further and say, this is what we're going to do. So I think in our community, that's what we need the most. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Digdon?
Thank you very much. Yeah. And what our warden says, 100% bang on. We also have one of those subsidized housing in Pumnico. And and it's full all the time with a waiting list of up to 2 years sometimes. And it's a shame to say it, but a lot of times when these people that are in these homes and that are from around here, the only way someone actually happens to get in is if one of these residents of that home and that dies, and that's the way it works sometimes. I feel as though I'm what our CAO's shown us here tonight, I'm all for, but I don't want this to be a municipality again trying to take care of what the province or what the federal government should be taking care of. Because they knew this problem was coming years ago, and they've turned a blind eye to it. We're here now, and it's, oh my, what are we gonna do? We have to play catch-up. But we can't, as a municipality, play catch-up. It boils down to funds. It's as simple as that. And if they're not gonna come our way, we can't do much for our residents out there. So if there's some funds to be found, by all means, try and find them. And the only other thing now with developers, and that they're shying away from, and that is because of interest rates. It's made a big, you're looking at $1 million, at a 3 or 4% rate, or $1 million and 8% rate, it's a big chunk of change. So, no, I agree wholeheartedly what you've said, but I also feel as though that maybe this would be good to look at, to see if we can leverage some funds from agencies out there and see what we can at least do for the people.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you. I feel like this is kind of like a first step, because I think the data would be important to have, because I don't know, speaking for myself, I don't know if I feel like I have enough, like, of a sense of really the real problems out there, right? Like, we know a few things here and there, but it's probably a lot worse than we even realize, right? So even just having numbers and data to back that up, and if we have the opportunity to get some funding, that would be that would be amazing, because we've been talking about this for a while, but we don't know where to go with it, right? We just don't know where to go. I was curious, do the other units have such a position? Like, do they have anything like this going on?
I think other units depend, local units, I'd say it's a hard no right now. And every unit has a different kind of approach. Towns are typically heavy on the subsidized housing side. Like, so when we look at like tri-county housing and you count the beds, a lot of them are in the town. We are lesser, though we would require more. But I think their issue is more about that, which in my opinion, and in the opinion of many here, is predominantly the responsibility of the provincial government. And in fact, they took over the cost, which kind of confirms that that's in fact the case. Other municipal units certainly have done this. Like HRM has got like a whole department, but that's a whole different story. Other units certainly have done this. Some do it through their economic development officers. They then task those people with those kinds of jobs. My experience has been that if you do it on the side of your desk, you do it about as good as what the job on the side of your desk is. I think our unique approach here is to say two things. Number one is we're not responsible for those subsidized homes. Absolutely not. But what that person might be responsible for is to bring the province to the attention that it deserves, so that Argyle can be selected as one of those things. So somebody needs to run that. Somebody needs to go find that information. And so that would be the role of our coordinator. It wouldn't be, the other thing with municipal government is that we're not developers, nor do we want to be. It's to accelerate and enable development. This is the purpose of this position. So it would be to attract third-party development, absolutely. But it would also be to bring the province, they're desperate to build, they need somewhere to build, and we need to answer the call.
Right.
So that's really what this proposition is. The reason why I'm asking you, again, I don't usually ask to apply for money, but what I'm saying is if we don't got the money, we're taking a chance here by also approving the position in advance. It's not a risk because the money is there, because we're avoiding other costs in favor of this. Bringing in that person, we may not be successful on this application, but there are other applications that we might be successful in. And from my perspective, we don't know that until we have that person helping us get there. And that's why the recommendation is as such. I take adding resources, human resources here very, very seriously. We are a small municipality, but it's hard not to facing the situation we have here on housing.
Thank you. Councillor Surratt?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I think that we've been sitting on the fence on this for a long time, and I'll echo, I think the CEO stole my thunder, by just sitting on the fence and not doing anything. We're going behind. We've been going behind for a long time. And I think it's time that we get that person out, start searching. Let's face it, you've all said it, the feds and the provinces pushing for this. So why don't we start looking? We have somebody there looking, and guess what? We may catch something on the way. I think it's a win-win. It's a win-win. So I'll make that motion that we hire that person.
Thank you.
I'll second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded. Do you need more clarification on that motion, or is that? Sorry. Go ahead.
No, and to speak on this motion, I don't need anything. If council wishes to give permission to make the application, it can do so through separate motion.
Okay.
But for me, if it's your intention to hire that person, you've almost given me permission to go get the money to find. So the second motion is entirely up to council to do. Clarity is always key.
Okay.
You can do that. But on this motion, that's as clear
Okay.
as day.
So this,
I'll add on that motion.
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
And I'll add on that motion that we that we apply for the funding.
Okay. Perfect.
The secretary agrees.
Where's who seconded that? Gordon, you're okay with that?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm good, yeah, I'll second that.
Any questions or comments on that? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded, motion carried. So you have what you need, CAO?
I do, and thank you for your confidence.
Perfect. Okay. Next, we have recommendation for returning officer. There's no attachment, so I have nothing to say. Go ahead, CAO.
I'd like to recommend that Scott Surratt be our returning officer for the 2024 election. I'd send you the resume, but you know what he is. There's nothing to say. We'll make arrangements on our end around making sure that processes are done appropriately, but Scott is really the number one candidate, and I know he'll be very passionate, and he'll be a fabulous returning officer for you.
Okay, do we have a seconder? Okay, any questions on that? And I'm assuming you're okay with that, Scott? Okay. Okay. Any questions on that? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded? Motion carried. Next, we have for letter M, amendments to the MCE Development Agreement. So there's a memo from Colliers, and there is the development agreement changes. So we had a meeting, the Mariner Center, the MCEB had a meeting on Monday. We had a few, actually it was a fairly long meeting. It was a almost 3-hour meeting. We had a few things on the agenda. But one of the things that came up was the development agreement, because when these documents were created, it was created with the idea that it was for the Expansion Steering Committee. So that's done now. So we now have transitioned into the MCEB and the EPC. So some of the roles have changed a little bit, and we lost an EPC member in, well, I can't remember, it was a few months ago anyway, but we were looking into, we selected a new member according to our development agreement. However, some of the roles have changed. So one of the roles that have changed is the project lead. So Alain was on CAO Muse was on the EPC as a member, and we had, as you know, Mark Brophy was our project lead. Well, things are going to change a little bit, and he's going to be focused, he's going to become our project manager now. So he's going to be, the focus is going to change here on in because we're getting closer and closer, and Alain will take the project lead position. So those are some of the changes that have happened. But in order for all of that to be able to happen, we have to agree to these amendments in the development agreement. So we're looking for that, because once you guys, I'm assuming you'll agree with that, once that's agreed upon, then there is a potential other position to be filled for the EPC. And we can't approve that until the changes are made, until these changes are approved in the development agreement. I hope I explained that clearly, because it was, a little bit confusing to us as well. So we are looking to have, and the development agreement was provided for you, and you may have noted that there is some wording changes in there that were in red. Some things are added, some things are taken out. And I'm assuming you've had a chance to read that. If you're okay with it, we're looking for a motion to approve that development agreement.
I will move.
Okay, do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Saulnier. Are there any questions or comments on that? Councillor Surratt?
I just want to say thank you, Madam Chair, for explaining, because I had read it, I was all balled up. EPC, MCEB, project lead. So thank you for explaining that.
And the only reason I could explain it is because Mark Brophy explained it to us. And I took lots of notes, but it is, I know, it was a bit confusing, but basically it's changing because we had those committee changes, right? Like one was let go, we have new committees, and it's just some cleaning up so that we can do what we need to do. Okay. Any question? Oh, sorry, Councillor Digdon.
Thank you. Just wondering and just thinking out loud here, I guess, and this would be directed to our CAO. Will this be more work put on you?
That was our question too. I'm going to let him speak, but this will actually be a much better transition for him.
Okay.
We checked into that.
'Cause-
We wanted to be certain. I will let him speak, though. Go ahead.
It puts people in the right place. I will say that both Mark and I have spent a lot of time and energy. I know you all know that, right? And sometimes it's done in the silence. But I really respect the amount of energy that Mark has put on this project. Mark is a project manager, right? The project lead makes it sound like it's more work, but what it actually is just stakeholder management or interested party management. And so it basically means that my job is to make sure the MCEB is informed of the details that are happening. The technical details will now be taken care of by the people who know what the hell they're doing. Before that, I think because Mark was both lead and management, that he felt like he was in both courts. He had to please MCEB and do all sorts of work. And then, of course, I'm the sponsor, so like we're all circling each other in a very inefficient way. The EPC, despite a lot of conflict and a lot of work, has come a long way. And this change, I think, will make it better for him as well. So it's both of us. We are adding 2 new members as well, so there's more people sharing the load. So long answer to say, I feel a lot more comfortable moving forward like this.
Okay, thank you, because as far as I'm concerned, Mark has one thing on his plate. You have a lot more than one thing on your plate, and how many times over the last 7.5 years sitting around here? So I can do it, yeah, put it on me, put it on me, yeah, put it on me. So, yeah, that's just thinking out loud and thinking of what we don't want you to get into.
I appreciate, so first of all, that's the first thing that MCEB said. It's the first thing that you've said. You know I've had a health issue that kind of like, that was a bit of a wake-up. I think that Guy and I, Councillor Stewart and I even had a conversation about this as early as 20 minutes ago. And, you know, these kinds of things change as a person, and I've got a strong, strong team. And and I'm hoping that you've noticed that they're now they're now doing more and more work for you directly than ever before. So that's very helpful. And I just want to say thank you very much for considering my health in all this. Appreciate it.
Any other questions or comments on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded, motion carried. Thank you. Next, we have number 8, correspondence and for information. So 8A is tax clarification. So there are 2 attachments. I believe this was kind of, Councillor Sonia, you wanted to have something added on the agenda here because you've had some questions. And I mean, I know when the assessments went out, I think we all heard from residents about that, right? And I mean, we all felt it ourselves. I'm sure your own assessments have gone up as well. And sometimes I feel like, even though we explain it, not everybody understands how this works, right? Like when the PVSC assessments come out, I think sometimes we automatically, I'm going to use the word, get attacked from residents because they think it's us putting up their assessments, but it really isn't us. It isn't us at all. It's actually the province that sets that. But we set the tax rate. That's our role in that. And if we look at the housing market, we know what's happened, right? And I looked at, you know, our assessment went up by a fair amount too, and my husband wasn't happy either. But I said, but if we were to sell our house now, that's probably what we could get for it, which we didn't pay that for it, but just with the housing markets the way that it is, that's, you know, what we've seen. So, Councillor Sonia, I will let you speak. Sorry.
I don't have a lot to say. I just kind of echoed what you're going to say, but the questions that came to me seemed important. They want to know where their taxes go, especially with this new assessment. And, you know, they understand that the province puts out the assessment, but that we profit from that. And so where does their taxes go again? And with their assessments, they're looking at some of these homes are like $500,000 and some of them probably $1 million. And one guy said to me, he says, and I still have potholes and brush in my ditches, you know. Nothing's being done for it by the provincial government and stuff. So they deserve a good explanation. And I know that there are people here that can give a better one than I can. Thank you.
Board Muse?
Going back to the assessments, yes, the assessments did go up considerably for most and for, well, just about everybody. I'm not sure if people are looking at that and thinking, oh, my taxes are going to go up that much more. It's going to go up, but they have to look at their cap. You know, and based on last year's, and correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't it only 3.2% with the cap?
The cap this year is 3.2%, so it limits the market increase to 3.2% to residents that are entitled to the cap.
Right, and that is based on what your assessment was last year?
Correct.
Like the
Correct.
assessment, if your assessment was 150 last year and it's 200 this year, your tax rate is going to go up by 3.2% off that 150.
Correct.
Okay.
Of those that have the cap.
Because the cap
Right.
is, people don't understand the cap. It took me a while to understand what they meant by 3.2%. Is it 3.2% of what? And it's not an easy thing for people to understand where it comes from. But you can look at that. I mean, some assessments went up by 50,000, but their taxes may only go up by, I don't know, 5,000 or whatever, 5 or 6,000, depending on where they were. Anyway, just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you. Counselor Digdon?
Thank you. And in talking about that, I actually am still receiving calls on it today as far as how much the assessment went up and everything. And the cap, a lot of places out there now are not capped though. And what I'd be scared of, we as a council voted approximately, I don't know, maybe 4 years ago or so in favor of removing the cap in Nova Scotia. In 10 years, I believe it was 10 years, looking at it 10 year. I definitely would like to reevaluate that and see where it's gonna go, because, you know, at some point in time, folks, there's a lot of people and that with their backs against the wall there now and are having a hard time, you know, making ends meet. So I feel as though as a council, we owe that to our residents.
I don't think we saw this coming, right? When we
By
made that
no
decision.
means.
Yeah, we would never have imagined that things were going to go the way that they went.
Exactly,
Yeah.
you know, and having, I believe if you look in the minutes, I may have been the one that may have made that motion. And at the time, I was told it was going to be a more fairer
Right.
system for our residents and all that. But I definitely, if I had to make that motion again today,
Right.
I'm afraid I would be
The circumstances are different, that's why.
exactly. But yeah, thank you.
There is a graphic that has been attached to the agenda. Where do my tax dollars go? I know we've seen this before, and I've been asked the question too, like what services are covered? And I think this is a really good, I like the representation of this because it shows, you know, the things that must be paid to the province and then the remaining, right? So this, I'm sure, has been on our website before. Yeah, could we put that there again, especially this time of year, right, where people are wondering? Maybe that would be a good idea.
Absolutely.
Okay, are you good with that?
Just to add, we have no choice in 70% of what we pay out, is that correct?
It's probably more than 70%. It's quite a bit.
There, as of last year's, the numbers there are as last year's budget. They will change this year because certain things have been eliminated. But there's about 28% that you just collect from the municipal taxpayer and then shift it to the provincial tax. Education, policing, corrections, all those, there's about 27%. Probably another 35, 40%, in addition to that, would be services that you are mandated to do. Fire services, waste collection, those things, you don't really have a lot of choice in doing it. How you do it is entirely your choice. So you're quite right. By the time you get through all that, you got about 70% of things that are committed. It's not that we don't have control over some of that. We do, but we absolutely have zero control over at least 27% of our budget. And then after that, it becomes very discretionary. The discretionary spending is very small. So we make a lot of decisions, important decisions, on a fraction of the budget, because the rest of the stuff is just kind of like, well, we got a contract. There's not much we can do with that, right? So you're quite right to point that out.
Thank you. Counselor Surratt?
Yes, I just want to add on, I mean, it's written down here and people can go online and look at the agenda and see this add on, but the commercial for small businesses, I've talked to a few of the small business, more than a few, and it's tough, there's no cap there.
Yeah.
You don't have a cap, and and then very well that CAO put down the last couple of years, look at the increase they've had on their taxes. So it makes it tough for them, they've got employees, they've got their taxes to pay and everything else, and, it takes a profit to do that, but just to mention that it is tough. Anyhow, just want to mention that.
Thank you. Okay, next we have the IRIS report for MCEB Communications. So the report is attached. That was from the public engagement sessions that we had. So IRIS was hired to provide a report for, it's called What We Heard. So basically, what are the things that people listed as, what are they happy about? What are they not so happy about? What are the questions that they have? So this has been posted on the Mariner Center website. And I believe people are starting to share it. So if you do see it come up, please share it so that people have access to it as well. And there's usually a spot that they can still add comments if they would like. But we've been working on addressing the things that have come up around this report and figuring out how we can resolve some of those issues and what our next steps would be. Financial requests. 9A, We Care Radiothon sponsorship requests. So we usually get this every year for the Radiothon. It is going to be on Thursday, February 29th. They are requesting that we become a bronze member, I believe I saw. Yes, for a $1,000 sponsorship. This happens every year. Okay. Okay. Moved and seconded. Any questions on that motion? Counselor Surratt?
Where's the money coming from? What line? Do we have something in our, I know it wasn't planned, so I'm just wondering.
It'll be under sponsorship. It's just a little bit more than the typical sponsorship of $500. You're still within budget, but it won't be like a straight up grants to orgs. It'll be like.
Thank you. Yep.
Any other questions?
C'est dans le matras.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded? Motion carried. Number 10, agenda topics for next meeting. Notice of motion by councilors. Is there anything any councilor has they want to bring forward? Okay, seeing none. No, anything question period? No. Okay, no in camera. So we will move to adjourn. Done.